Welcome to My Saga, a Star Wars fan podcast. Each week we'll bring you stories of how Star Wars impacted so many fans from around the globe, along with Star Wars news, reviews and discussion.
We would be honoured if you would join us.
So grab a scarf soda, deploy the garrison, put your feet up and join us here today at the My Saga podcast. Well, welcome to episode 14 of the My Saga podcast. It's May the 4th. It's Star Wars Day. And of course, with me, my Wookiee co-pilot, Blair. How are we, mate, today on Star Wars Day?
Oh, mate, I'm pumped to be here. I'm pumped to be here tonight. 4th of May. I mean, we couldn't have timed it for a better day. I mean, Thursday is our usual day for recording the show, and it just happens to be the 4th of May. And let's face it, today is a day to celebrate Star Wars, and it's just everywhere.
It is. Oh, I've been loving it. It's the vibe today's been very cool. I copped a lot of jokes at work, actually, though. Everyone was like, oh, it's Star Trek Day. Where's your Spock shirt?
Yeah.
And I had someone walk up to me with Stargate SG-1, and they went, oh, isn't it Stargate Day? And I was like,
No.
I was copping all of it today at work, and every time it would be like someone doing the Vulcan sign with their hand or something going, oh, you know, and then someone did a mashup of Lord of the Rings, Star Trek, and Stargate together, and all day, that's what I got. But it was cool. The vibe's been really great, and it's probably been, you know, like it's about to click over in America. So, you know, I think that's when we're going to see probably a little bit more stuff coming through about May the 4th, because we're one of the first to celebrate, which is really cool. But I have to say, though, both you and I in the last 24 hours of talking about Star Wars stuff, we've gotten some things that have been Star Wars orientated.
Yeah, we have. Yeah,
there's nothing. Sure. There's been nothing better. Like I had to go and pick up the kids from school, and they came home, and I had a mail call today. And,
nice.
Yeah, I was a bit shocked, and it was something I got shown it back when The Force Awakens premiered. There was a medallion that was given out at the premiere here in Australia, and there's just no way to get it. And, you know, unless you were at the premiere in Australia, there's no way to get it. And today I can officially say that I own that medallion.
Oh,
so, which features BB-8 on the front, and it's got the Star Wars language. Is it Arabush?
Yep.
Arabesh or whatever, Arabush, and it's got BB-8 in the front and the 2015, and on the back it's got Star Wars: The Force Awakens. And there were two types of lanyards. There was a white one and a red one, and you know, light and dark. And I chose white, and I managed to get one, and I was completely blown away that I managed to find one, and at a very minimal cost, I should say. Very, very minimal. So awesome. I was very shocked and surprised to find that in the mailbox today. And then after I left there, I went to the newsagent, and Star Wars Insider they've what's the word? They've given the magazine a fresh look. And today they launched a 40th anniversary edition of the Star Wars Insider, and it's just called Star Wars: A New Hope, and it's a whole magazine dedicated to the first film.
Really? This is at the newsagent here.
Yes, today. So you have to get it. It was $13, and I have to say, it is stunning. There is the photography in there. There's photos I've never seen before. There are a lot of behind the scenes photos, some shots, just things I was shocked and surprised. I'm looking through it and going, oh, well, I've seen that shot before. And I'm like, hang on, I've never seen that photo before. But the whole magazine is dedicated to the 40th anniversary. And it's got Luke on the cover in his land speeder, and it's just the 40th official celebration magazine. So it was just beautiful. So that's come from Star Wars Insider, but it hit the shops today. So, but there were a few people wandering around with Star Wars shirts today, and you know, we give each other little glances and all that sort of stuff. But
little nod,
it's like that acknowledgement. But what did you get?
What did I get?
Yeah, what did you get?
What did I get?
On Star Wars Day, what did you?
Well, on Star Wars Day, yeah. Well, actually, it wasn't on Star Wars Day.
Well,
it
technically yesterday.
Arrived yesterday. It was yesterday, but they didn't get sort of opened and played with until today. Well, as you know, and probably many of our listeners know out there, that I collect Black Series action Star Wars figures. And just recently I've started getting a few of the Japanese SH Figure Arts ones. And the first one I got was Han Solo and Luke, which I was very, very happy with, the quality of those. And I took the plunge and I ordered Mace Windu and Episode 2 Obi-Wan Kenobi. And they were a long time coming. I was expecting them about a week and a half ago. I was starting to get a little bit antsy as to where they were. Anyway, yesterday the Star Trek guy just dropped them off at work, and
of course, had to be the Star Trek guy.
The Star Trek guy, exactly. Yeah, Star Trek. Yes. Anyway, I didn't get to pull them out and have a look until this morning, and I tell you what, my jaw hit the ground when I pulled these figures out. The detail is just ridiculously, stupidly good. On these Mace Windu it's Samuel L. Jackson in 6 inches of plastic.
Yeah,
it's just amazing. You've seen some photos. I shot some photos. I'm just shot and sent Adam some photos of it this morning. There's one photograph there that I would have thought was actually a photo of him in character.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for the toy plastic lightsaber he was holding.
Yeah.
I'm just astounded at the quality of these things. They are just magnificent. And the Obi-Wan Kenobi too. I mean, and they've both got interchangeable faces. Not between each other, but they've got two different faces each for different expressions. And Obi-Wan Kenobi's got like about 4 pairs of hands and just all this stuff that you can do with them. And I mean, it was hours of fun taking photos this morning, and
all that sort
changing
of stuff.
Hands and heads and all different sorts of things. And so they are now both standing proudly on my Black Series figure shelf. And I will say, like the quality of the Hasbro Black Series figures, are up and down. Some are really, really good. Some are, you wouldn't give to your dog.
That's nice, isn't it?
But it is nice, isn't it? Hasbro, pull your game up. But I will say that with a few of these SH Figure Arts figures in your Black Series collection, it just lifts the whole shelf. The quality of these things is amazing. And look, let's face it, yes, they are probably close to twice the price sometimes of what you're paying for Black Series.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, if they're consistent with the quality and what they're bringing out, I'd rather buy one of those as instead of 2 Black Series figures. You know what I mean? And the thing is with them, problem with them is you've got to get them sort of pretty quickly after they come out because they seem to rise in value really quick. So there's a couple there that I would have liked and missed out on that, probably upwards of a couple of $100 now. Yeah. I'm not going to pay that for them. But and there's some good stuff coming. We've got Qui-Gon Jinn coming out, and he looks amazing from the photos that I've seen. And so that was a fantastic one for me. Oh, I did get an AT-ACT driver from Rogue One in the Black Series figures, which cool. I think is an exclusive, and that was a little Hong Kong purchase. And only picked it up for probably about $5 more than what you'd be paying here in Australia if we ever got them.
Yeah, well, we'll get them in 6 months.
So I was happy about that as well. But but SH Figure Arts, full marks for me. Love them.
No. Well, I know today too, a lot of people went bolting to the shops today looking for the 40th anniversary Black Series figures because the news had gotten out. Toys R Us had dropped them early, and then there was the whole thing of he had to pull them back because May 4th was when they wanted them released. I can say that looking on Facebook, only 2 retailers got them, and that was Toys R Us and Maya. And they've been snapped up crazy. I know Toys R Us had the buy one get one free, which was just too bad. So considering if you're paying instead of paying $35, you're paying about $25 a figure, which isn't too bad for what they are, especially they are. So I know I've made a little purchase. But I ran the rest though. I did it online, which is random. So I did 4 figures. So it was about $100. So I don't know what I'm getting. So I could end up with 4 Lukes or 4 layers or something.
Okay.
It's random pick. So
I bet you you're not going to get any R2D2s. I know that. And I know that for a fact. They're
why is that though?
Well, see, the thing was, R2 was in the first series of the Black Series when they came out back in 2014.
Yeah.
And he just goes for ridiculous money online. I'm talking like 120, 130, 140 Australian dollars, and even more. And people were happy to pay it, right? Yeah. I did acquire one on eBay, but not for that sort of money. But yeah, it was a bit more expensive than buying it retail. Put it that way.
Yeah.
But I think the thing is, people have seen the money that R2's going for online, and so if they get them, and you see it on Facebook, I picked up 3 R2s today, and you're like, oh, good on you, mate. Don't you leave something for somebody else? Oh, yeah, it's great. Yeah, okay, you're a collector, but if they're thinking about moving them on, and I think the thing is because they've re-released it, I don't think you're going to see those sorts of dollars for it again.
No.
Like what we saw, before.
I don't think you will.
Now, look, the only 40th anniversary figure that I'd be really excited about getting because I already have them in most of them in the other, the previous in the boxes when they came out.
Yeah.
It would probably be the Darth Vader.
Yes.
His sculpt is really, really nice. He looks really, really good. But there again, I don't know if I'm going to want to pay $75, $80 for the cardboard background with him, as well. And my other problem with them is too, look, they look fantastic. I love the retro, I love the vintage look of them. It takes me right back to being 12 again, just looking at them. That's great. However, I don't see if you're going to keep them on the card, that's great. But as far as displaying things are concerned, if they had like a plastic clamshell over them or something where you could take the figure out and put it back for display, that'd be great. I'd be totally on board with it. But what I've seen, it's just like the old figures. Once you rip them off the card, it's destroyed.
That's it.
And I can get the point. So I'm not, because I have them anyway.
There's no point.
Now the problem is with the next wave coming out, which has the Jawa, Death Squad Commander,
Tusken
Raider, right, as well, which haven't been released in Black Series before. That's going to be a little bit more difficult for me to pass up. However, I would still want them on my shelf, standing proudly alongside all my other figures.
Yeah.
Now, I do believe that they will be releasing them in the standard boxes sometime down the track, is what I've heard. So they're not going to be exclusively on the 40th cards.
Yep.
But you might get to see those until next year sometime, with especially the Jawa and Death Squad Commander.
They look good.
I think the Tusken Raiders coming out later this year in another wave in the boxed wave. But so I won't be running out getting him, but I do want a Darth Vader. But I'm in two minds about it because the dollars I'm not going to have to fork out to get him.
Oh, well, that's what I think. Toys R Us had it listed at $79.99, so $80 for one figure. But yes, that big display, and it looks good. See, the thing for me is a lot of those figures I don't own, so that was for me. It's like if I get 4 and I get 4 out of the 5 that are released for the price I got, I think, well, that's not too bad. But I'm torn whether to open them or not, because I've got Black Series here, but a lot of them aren't open. But after I pulled one out, I was like, oh, hang on, because I've got the Luke and X-Wing gear, and I opened that eventually. I was like, oh man, I can display this. This looks really good. It looks actually better out of the box. And I was like, oh, I don't know. So now I'm very torn with regards to it, but I'll keep everyone posted what I get and see what happens doing a random pick online. I was like, when I got it, I was like, oh, I'll get to pick which ones I want. And then it went, no, this is a random pick. And I'm like,
no. It'd be like, oh, I got 4 layers. You want one? Yeah.
Yes, but I do have another parcel coming tomorrow, actually. I've got a book coming. The Tops Wide Vision Series 1 book.
Really?
Yeah, so I got that online at a steal from a website called Booktopia, and I think I paid about $26. It's a hardcover book of all the wide visions from Series 1. So I'm interested to see what this looks like, because I have the entire set of those cards and a few of the chase cards. So I'm intrigued, but I stumbled across it and I was like, I got a coupon for free postage, and I thought, well, I can't pass that up. And then I saw that book and it was at that price. And I thought, oh, I'll get something. I'm going to treat myself. And
why
was why not on Star Wars Day. So, but yeah, look, there was a few little May the 4th things going around. I know JB had 20% off on Star Wars pop vinyl, selected pop vinyl, and a few other places. But it was very low key here in Australia, I think, in comparison to some of the other years. But tomorrow, who knows? Rumors are flying that I think Variety or Vanity Fair are going to drop a photo session of all the characters in full costume from The Last Jedi, including Laura Dern and Benicio del Toro. But like any rumor, it could just be a lot of smoke and mirrors sort of thing. They may not do anything. So next 24 hours will be interesting because America's always the telltale sign of things when it comes to that sort of stuff. But a lot of discounts everywhere on May the 4th. But that's what we're here for, celebrating, the 40 years of Star Wars this year. And of course, it's not the true 40th anniversary just yet.
No. 3 weeks.
3 weeks we'll be celebrating the actual milestone of when it was released to the public. But yeah, look, going down that memory trip tonight, we're going to look at a few things on the show, and I know one of the first things I wanted to talk about were like background characters from the films that we were so connected with, or that we loved or enjoyed, or felt maybe should have got more screen time, because those background characters can be quite important. They could be a sought after figure in the collectible world. We all loved our background characters, especially Constable Zubo. From the
what a role he had
from The Force Awakens. You know what? I don't think we ever saw him. If we did, he might have been there for half a frame.
That's it.
But
and the way he was advertised before, you thought he was going to be a major character at some stage. You even had photos of him and
Black Series figure. Yeah, 3 3/4 inch.
I did not purchase him for. Yeah.
No. Well, I thought that was Simon Pegg. That was what I thought. They're pushing it because it's Simon Pegg's character. And then, what a show. But there are those background characters that, we're starting to see a little bit more. I think, we've got a character like Hobby, who was in Empire Strikes Back, and then we're getting a backstory now in Rebels, which is sort of really cool with him and Wedge, how they both escaped the Imperial Academy where they were doing the TIE fighters and stuff. So we're getting those little background characters are starting to develop a little bit more time on screen, like General Dodana. Of course, we saw him in A New Hope, and now we're seeing him in Rebels, and we saw him in Rogue One with a different actor, of course, which was really interesting. But those background characters that we all can sort of latch onto. But who were your favourites?
Mate, I want to see a Major Derlin trilogy.
Major Derlin.
With old Cliff Clavin, wasn't Major Derlin played by, what's his name, who plays Cliff Clavin in Cheers? And
John Ratzenberger.
John Ratzenberger. A lot of the voices in Pixar movies and that now.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I could just see a movie, just him sitting at the end of the bar at the cantina, just commenting on everything. I'd watch that show. I think that would be fantastic. But well, the beauty is with all the Star Wars characters and with everything on screen is it just fleshes the world out so beautifully, and one thing what is so fantastic about it is that you have this thing where you're watching the screen, but it's like you're looking, if you're like looking through a straw at the world, right? So you're looking through a straw at the world, and there's all this other stuff around you that you can't see, and all these characters that come into frame and that are all coming into that little view that you've got. So in your mind, it just fleshes the world out beautifully. You're like in a universe that exists, and it's populated by all these interesting characters. I think I'd like to see a bit more Pruneface to have some more screen time.
Pruneface. Love that skit in Robot Chicken.
Yeah, it's brilliant, isn't it? We get to see if he changes his copy of paper after all or something. That would be really good. But no, you're right. I mean, a lot of the rebel pilots all have their own characters and all basically have their own backstories.
Oh, they do.
Whether Porkins is a favourite of mine. I love Porkins.
Son of Porkins.
I'd love to see Son of Porkins. Hey, I'd love to. I'd love to see some more of Porkins' story as well. And yeah, I mean, it's just, where do you start? There's just so many, where you start from.
It depends, like within those environments as well. You just have to look at. I think the first time we really got hit with a lot of background characters was in the Cantina Bar in A New Hope.
Yes,
we saw a few little here and there. We had the Stormtroopers and the Rebel Troopers, and we got to see some Tusken Raiders and some Jawas and some droids. The droids are really cool because a lot of people now are droid collectors, so they try and get all those different types of droids when they're released. But when we walked into that Cantina Bar, and I know, looking back and you're hearing those remarks that George was not happy with the Cantina Bar because you had the Insect Man and the Midget and the Frog Man and Wolf Man, and he wanted something a little bit more that was really full on.
Alien,
But still, even then, you had the Biff band, the Cantina band there, and they're themselves, they're just playing music, but they're so important to that scene, and
were they Fred and Nad and the Mogul Cones or something?
Yep.
Modal something.
Yeah, that's right. And but it gave a realism to the universe we were in because of those characters. You can look back now and go, okay, that's just a chick in a green bodysuit and some green paint on the face, but still, even then, back then, and it still sort of resonates with regards to how Star Wars has progressed in a way. But I think the Cantina the bar is amazing for background of showing all these, that low end scum of the universe, and where they hang out was that bar.
Well, for me, it's when the movie really took off. You had the beginning part was great. Let's face it, the first 20 minutes on Tatooine, that's interesting. Everything that's going on there, you get the story. And, you get Luke's story, his heritage, and what happened to Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen, and that's all terrible and tragic. But when we hit Mos Eisley, that's when the film really, really took off. And walking into that cantina, I mean, and I was 11 when the movie came out, right? So as I was that perfect age that the movie was geared towards at the time, and my mind was completely blown when they walked into that. And because we didn't have instant access to things like we do now, we didn't have video, we couldn't watch the movie 100 times, No. In your mind, that scene was a lot bigger and scarier and than it actually was. In hindsight, when you look back at it, and that's what made just what made the movie so good and made the movie so exciting. I'll always remember, and I think I've told this story before, I always remember the very first time I saw Star Wars down the coast at Sundale Cinema. We were watching it, and the cantina scene came on, and there was this little old lady sitting down the front, and she was about in her 80s with a walking frame, and she'd gone to the movies by herself to see this film, and she didn't know what it was, obviously. And then as soon as about halfway through the cantina scene, I've never seen a little old lady move so fast. It's like, right, that's it. I've had enough. And I can still remember her leaving the theater in the cantina scene. But just so much happens in that, 5 or 10 minutes of the cantina scene that just tells you so much, and you want to talk background characters and history.
Yep.
You watch that thing, everybody's got a story while they're there, and you're just interested in every character that's around that bar. The bartender, what's his story? You just want to know, you just want to find out. And I know that, back in the 90s, there was a book that was released that had, stories.
That's right, stories of the cantina.
I've got a copy of it somewhere. I must see if I can dig it out. And I remember reading that, and I was just so fascinated because like each character had like about a 5 to 10 page story about how they got to that moment in the movie, and what happened beforehand and that. That was so great. And of course, you had Ben lopping the arm off what's his name? I can't think of his name.
Ponda Baba?
That's it, Ponda Baba.
Baba.
You had that, and that was so dangerous and scary at the time. Not only was I as a 10-year-old, 11-year-old dealing with all these creepy alien creatures, all of a sudden there was like real violence and a real threat, and that was like the first time I actually saw in a movie that level of violence when you think of it. When Ben lops the arm off Ponda Barbara and you see that arm on the ground, and of course we were all a lot innocent back then, and I think the world was too. There was like a collective gasp of shock. I remember through the movie, and so where I'm going with all of this is that scene is what changed Star Wars for me and sent it in a completely different direction. And you were just grabbed from that moment on all the way through. You were invested,
And I think that like through the original trilogy, we got to see spatterings of that. Not so much in Empire. Like when we got to Cloud City, even then it was very low key. There wasn't much in the way of background there. We had the Ugnaughts, of course. They're like hairless Ewoks, I felt. But then when we got to back to Tatooine at Jabba's palace, we were introduced to more alien creatures, more background there. We had the band there. We had the Gamorrean guards. And the bounty hunters were probably the biggest thing. Actually, going back to Empire was the bounty hunters. They became instant classic. Everyone was like, "My God, there's a robot, and there's a fly-looking robot, and there's this lizard, and there's a guy wrapped in toilet paper, and and then there's this guy who he's just bounty hunter, but we all knew him as Boba Fett. It was.
He's never actually named.
No, he's not.
So
but it's funny though, in a deleted scene though from Empire, when Leia is attending to Luke, he mentions Leia, I think, says the name Boba Fett, but it was cut.
Oh, okay.
She's like, "Oh, where's Han?" I think Luke goes, "Where's Han?" And he's like, "Oh, Boba Fett took him." So it's actually mentioned in the script, but it was never put out there. But but them as background characters were huge because I remember when I was little and I saw Empire for the first time, the first time I could remember, I had to have an IG-88 figure because I was infatuated with IG-88.
He was to me, he was the scariest of the bounty hunters because you wouldn't be able to bribe him. You wouldn't be able to deal with him. He'd be the Terminator.
Yeah. And
nothing would get in his way to. And you think, I mean, he doesn't work for money. He doesn't work for profit. No. Maybe what's the droid going to do with all of that? So what's his
motivation?
Vested motivation, his vested interest in the bounties that he goes for, and that made him a much more of a frightening prospect to me than even Boba Fett. Because he would just be, always on his mark the whole time. And if you knew that IG-88 was on your tail, you might as well give it up, mate, because
Yeah, go on, Scar. You're gone. But that's the thing, though. They became just instant. Fan favorites. These bounty hunters were obsessed over. But I think for me, as far as background characters is concerned, and I think this is where the prequels have a tick in their column, because George went from a very small corner of the universe being showcased to the largest platform he could put out there. And we were introduced, I think, with the prequels and the Clone Wars, we were introduced to so many background characters, including the Jedi, because we had a Jedi Council and we could see them all, but it was usually only Yoda and Mace that would be doing the chatting. Kia Diamundi would say a few words here and there, but other than that, everyone was just like, "Oh yeah, sure, we'll just." We're nodding because that's what we do in the scene. But then you go, "Oh, look, there's one that, it's like, just nodding. Yep. Whatever they want to do, we won't die from that. No one's going to come and slaughter us. I won't speak up. But we were introduced to those. They were background characters. And we were like, who's that one? And who's that Jedi? And what's their story? And once again, as the films and I guess more as the cartoon series went on, we got those little bit of backgrounds to those characters. But that one in itself was amazing. When you go to the Senate and you've got all those alien races, it's just like, who's that? And we got to see and grow with these background characters. But once again, they were so integral to the story.
That's right, mate. Yariel Puff, I think he was underused, and
Yariel Puff.
And I thought, surely George was drunk when he came up with that name. But,
had to be.
But there's also that he got his due in Robot Chicken as well, didn't he?
He did, didn't he?
And he went off to get pizza. That right? You ate the pizza, you're vegan.
Yeah, that's
he
right.
comes back and the whole council is gone. What do you say? Oh, I couldn't get calamari because they're people. Apparently.
Yeah, that's right. Couldn't get calamari pizza.
Yeah, but but what you just said, he's sitting there and he's like, so what? We're all agreeing with everything now. No one else has anything else to say.
That's it. It's like, yep, Yeah, we don't get a vote.
No, that's right. I mean, one good thing that the prequels did was what you said was, opening up the universe completely to, creatures that we've never seen. And you just got an inkling of just how big the galaxy is. Thousands and thousands of races, and very few Jedi to police it all.
No.
Really,
it showed where the universe was at, and you can't control everything, unfortunately.
Well, we're at the very end of the Jedi's rule when the prequel started. Really, it was even Phantom Menace was showing signs of that then. So yes, Netflix, bring on the Old Republic series, please.
Fingers crossed.
Love to see the Jedi and Sith going at it in
fingers crossed.
Ancient times, so to speak. But no, you're right. I mean, there's just too many to choose from with the prequel movies as far as background characters are concerned. I mean, the amount of time that we spent on them is minimal, but I don't think for me the prequel characters stand out as much as the original trilogy.
No.
Probably because obviously the impact, like I've talked about.
That's it.
Had on me as a child growing up, and I mean, let's face it, I was a man in my 30s when the prequel started. So, and of course, and we've been assaulted by every CG effect character in every other movie made since Under the Sun. So there was nothing that was really jaw-droppingly groundbreaking for me, I must say.
No, I think it was cool that in The Force Awakens we had a nice balance, and I think we did too for Rogue One. So with some of those background characters, we got to see a few alien pilots, and Nine Numb got a bit more screen time. It's good to see that Nine Numb was there. And he's flying some X-Wing, so he's still doing his piloting, and he survived, obviously, because we didn't see him die.
30 years, he survived, yeah.
But there wasn't a riot, so, at the end of Force Awakens, go and bring back Nine Numb, or anything like that. How did you kill off Nine Numb? And all that sort of stuff. But it was good. Once again, we got to see a lot more background characters, and I think they were evenly spread. Jakku was a good spot, but once again, it had... Well, I think with The Force Awakens and with Rogue One, we got to see a snippet of the universe. We got to see a small corner of it each time. Not where, like, the prequels were very saturated, heavy with those background characters where you sort of lost your way. So, but, I love my background characters. There's a few that I missed that didn't, like Dak, who got killed in Empire.
Yeah.
I was devoted for him. It's like, I can take the Empire all on my own. It's like, yeah, dude, you ain't gonna last more than 4 minutes of screen time.
This one, Dak's got this. Yeah,
4 minutes of screen time, but they're a wonderful thing, and once again, they're all a part of making that universe, George's universe, complete. And once again, you've got your background characters that helped create a galaxy, and then in another way, you've got the people behind the scenes who help envision what George wanted, in especially the model makers, because back then in the 70s they didn't have CG. It was all blue screen and model work, and back then model work was still great. 2001 was probably the biggest thing when it came to model work, as far as how flawlessly it was done, and it was probably the high caliber standard. And then, of course, you got Star Wars, which went from 2001, say, at a score of 100, to then Star Wars at a score of 1,000. The model work behind there, and the team that especially Lorne Peterson gathered, and you had Ralph McQuarrie doing that concept work. But those model makers really stood out. But I know in the beginning George was very upset with the work they'd been doing early on.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm just still amazed when I watch the original, especially A New Hope, which was, the one that is still to me probably the most amazing film ever made. Just I look at everything with it, the editing, the music, the effects, the models as well. The thing was for George to come back and he'd had like $1 million budget for effects, and they'd done one shot or something.
Yeah, it was something like that. It was like we had one or three
one in the
shots,
can, and
something like that.
But to be able to bring those Ralph McQuarrie's paintings to life like they did, the Model Makers. I mean, let's face it, a lot of the stuff that came out of Star Wars was in Ralph McQuarrie's images, in Ralph McQuarrie's paintings, and to be able to, like, scratch built models from plastic battleship kits and all that to get the ships that we know and love today. And then look, we've had 40 years of it. They're just ingrained in our consciousness. And but to actually be making them for the first time and to putting it together. It's just an amazing accomplishment, and it was all rock and roll. I mean, those they were young. Those guys are all
they were young,
whatever,
hippie.
And that was part of the hippie. That was part of the problem too, because there was no real discipline, in the place at the time, and it was like a bit of a party, atmosphere is what I understand it to be. But mate, the work that they ended up putting out, which has just become, just iconic, is just incredible, and through the films as well, with The Empire Strikes Back with those walkers. I mean, that was just genius,
stunning,
absolute genius, that entire sequence. And you know what? In all seriousness, if Empire Strikes Back came out in the form it is now, I'd be just as excited about it.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, just to be working with nothing. And I think it's one thing I think Mark Hamill said once, George was able to take, pop sticks and glue and all this sort of thing and make this entire world out of it. And that's attributed to the all those guys who worked on that tirelessly to do it. And the beauty of it thing was they didn't know what they were making.
No,
they had not a clue what they were making, those guys, and when they saw the film, they just couldn't believe it. We worked on this.
Yeah, that's right. I can't remember who it was, but one of them goes, "But who worked on that? Who did that? Who did this shot?" It's so surprising, but like I think when I was chatting to Steve Gawley a couple of years ago, and how he got hurt, because his friend was Joe Johnston, who ended up being one of the model makers and an art director at ILM. And once again, Joe's designs and sketches based off what Ralph had done is what you see today. That sort of thing. Joe was also responsible for creating Boba Fett's design and look. So these guys were taking words on paper from George and creating those iconic ships that we see and designing that. And yes, they took it from model kits. They went and got car kits and everything they could. I can tell you now that ILM model shop had hardly any furniture in it, no air conditioning. It was hot as hell. And of course, that can create tension and all that sort of stuff. And they worked in that little sweatshop. And when that opportunity came after Star Wars' success to move to a better location, of course, some of those guys took it, because only a certain amount was selected to stay on. And then they, of course, hired more people after that. But it's so crazy, they were doing stuff out in the car park during the day. A lot of the trench run stuff was filmed out in the car park. I know Steve used his truck to drive past as they did the trench run thing, and where the explosion hits, where it gets missed. And that was Steve's truck. They used it. They weighted it down. It actually broke his truck and everything there. But those guys, like you say, they didn't know what they were doing, and of course it annoyed George a bit. And that's what Steve said. He said, we mucked around a bit. Of course we did. We thought it was a bit of fun. We're building model spaceships. We're meant to be having fun. But the whip came out, and George came in, and he got what he wanted with regards to it. And look, I look at Star Wars now, and I still think that there are films that have effects out today that aren't even close. I think looking back, even in another 20 years, people are going to look at Star Wars and going, how has this not aged? as far as its effects work, and they did step it up in Empire. When I saw the Imperial Walkers, I was like, my goodness, like that snow battle still to me is probably one of the best land battles that you'll see ever on film. With regards to, I guess, science fiction, it is just. You can't top it in any way. Who knows? The Last Jedi might top it. I don't know, because they're going to.
We shall see. Yeah, we'll see. The snow battle sequence. Just the it's a combination of everything. It's the music. It's the sound. It's the shots. And you got a whole sense of scale before those model walkers are on the scene. You knew that something big was coming, and that was how clever it was put together leading up to the walkers, because you're in your mind was already prepared for something that was going to be huge and massive. And you got the thump of the walkers' feet. You've got the snow falling on R2's head. You've got the troops all panicking, really getting ready for these. Looking at the horizon, watching for these things that are coming, and they know what's coming. Right? They've been probably in enough battles before or whatever. They know what the Empire's got in their arsenal. Yeah. And then when you see those walkers, I was thought of War of the Worlds. When I first saw that, and I think that was a big influence on the walkers themselves. And sure, there may be 1-2 feet high models and stuff like that, but in my mind, every time I see that film, they are massive. Lumbering pieces of machinery.
They're huge.
And just full testament, just everything. I mean, everything to me, the original trilogy, is perfect. I wouldn't change a thing, and it's just every sequence in there is just spot on.
I have to admit, I'd love to have a Star Destroyer model in my house. One of those Star Destroyer models that they built, they are just stunning. Like, but it's surprising when you think about how much work that's why I guess the Star Wars film took so long, 3 years to do, because literally they'd finish one, they'd have 6 months break, and then they'd be starting to do their builds and stop motion for the next film. It was constant on the go, and I think that's where George was clever in a sense. People would go, oh, you can't do that. But, he didn't have a complete script when they were doing these sequences. It's like, oh, we've got a snow battle. Okay, great. And this is what's going to do it. So he'd have these makeshift scenes and have them created with partial scripts, not full script pages. So he would map out that story in that manner. And it was quite clever, because then he could get those sequences in the can while the film was shooting. And already have it ready to go and go, well, okay, now we've worked out what we're going to do in those scenes. So he was very clever in that sense. And he continued to do that with the prequels. And even then, there was a lot of model work done in the prequels. Like, we know that Adam Savage from Mythbusters worked on some of the prequel films as a model maker. He was a model consultant. So, he worked on I can't remember if it was episode 2 or 3. But once again, a lot of those old model makers from the original films worked on the prequels, especially episode 1 and 2. So, they did a lot of work, on Tatooine at the Mos Espa race. That there's a nice like sweeping pan shot of the crowd. And they're all cotton buds, and that's
Q-tips.
Q-tips. Q-tips is the American call it.
Q-tips.
But that was a model, and then of course it had the CGI overlay on it to give it a more weathering and I guess mold into everything else that was around it. So then it would look all the same shot. But still, even then, the Naboo Palace was a model. Some of the pod races were models. Yeah. So as much as people carry on about the prequels being very CG heavy, they were actually really model heavy as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. Yes. Yeah, no, they I was surprised actually with the amount of model work that there were in the prequels when I remember what book I was going through, and they actually had all the what was involved. And I thought, oh, okay. So because the thing is, CG, no matter how good it is, and yeah, look, it's getting better, and that still can't 100% to me fill your eyes. Right? No. It's still just something that's not quite right about it. And whereas models, because they're a physical thing. Pardon me, the way they're shot, the angles and whatever, your brain is fooled a lot more easily with a physical model to me than a computer generated model. So it just makes sense that they were still doing it. So I wasn't surprised when I read it, but I just wasn't aware how much that they actually used models in the prequels.
Yeah, it was huge amount, but but they were a tight knit community, and all that, and I'm happy to say that I've got to meet a couple of those gentlemen, and Steve Colley and Charlie Bailey. So and I have my little keepsake from the model family, and that's my little Millennium Falcon. I know I've brought it up before. So to say that I've got something that was molded out of the mold that was used, it was good in itself. So
for sure.
I feel very lucky and privileged, and feel very lucky and privileged that I got to see the smallest version of the AT-ATs that were the molds that were used there. So but the guys did amazing work, and once again, if it wasn't for their vision to see what George wanted, and George was very particular in everything. He had to check it off. So as much as everyone's like, "Oh, George, that's exactly what George wanted." Yeah, but it came from the mind of someone else. And those model makers, that whole group of them are as important as George was. And I know that he knows that. And how he treated and respected his employees at the time with regards to those original films. So
yes, I mean George is great. He never forgets the people who got him where he was, and they're full testament to the man, because I think he's brilliant.
Oh, look. And, of course, George, once again, getting on to the next part, we had those background characters, we had the guys at ILM, but we also have the people who were in charge of these films, the directors of the Star Wars films. And Georgie boy, well, look, George directed 4 of those films. And, A New Hope, look, it was probably George's golden one. Lightning struck for him in a big way with regards to his directing and writing and everything that he got out of that film. And, a lot of people still put George as their number 1 Star Wars director, but then there was a lot of backlash when he did the prequels. So, people have said he'd lost his touch. So, I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think with A New Hope, a lot of the success of A New Hope and what it's put together, I'm not putting anything on George's directing and that, but having seen some of the rough cut of Star Wars, I could see why the Fox executives were rather concerned with it. But I think, when it all came together, it was his wife at the time, Marcia Lucas, editing, and Richard Chew. It's the editing of the film, the music, just when everything came together. Look, John Williams' music was just what lifted the whole
took it to another level.
Up completely to another level. And you can see what George always says, the music is his favorite part of the process. And those themes, again, are just ingrained in the psyche, and it just made the movie complete. And the thing was too, nobody had ever seen anything like it before.
No,
that was the thing. The idea that he wanted to make a space fantasy, a morality tale for young people, which speaks for everybody, speaks to the young person and everybody. And he absolutely succeeded brilliantly, and nobody had seen anything like that before. And it was just a golden time for it to have happened, because we were America was coming out of the Vietnam War and Watergate and all this sort of, everything was really bad at the time. Even cinema was really bad. It was just a lot of violence, a lot of movies not for young people. They weren't on the radar of film companies. And along comes this movie that just speaks to everybody. And like you said, he's lightning struck with Star Wars, and I think a lot of it was also to do with the time that it was released in. And today when you look at the film, it's a magical piece, and you wouldn't change a thing of the original cut. But don't get me.
I was waiting for that.
Don't get me started.
I was waiting for that.
Well, just quickly and all that. Getting back to the model makers, and that. Look, great. The special editions, great. I've got no problem with some of the scenes in it. However, the movie that we've got now is not the movie that won 7 Academy Awards.
No, it's not.
At the time, the work that those model makers did, not every shot that was there and their blood, sweat, and tears is there now. Right?
This is true.
That's my problem with the original, with the special editions. Great, have the special editions. Great, give us, give us the original ones as well, because they're the films that
won 7 Oscars. It was every shot was theirs.
That's right. And look, for what his movies, he could do with them what he wants, but that's fine. But every other director in the world, they may change their movie, but they'll also give you the original cut.
Yes, this is true
as well. So, hello, Ridley Scott, love you.
Ridley, love you, Ridley.
I love my 5 versions of Blade Runner.
Can't complain about that, mate.
I can't complain about that. Anyway, I digress. Now, as far as Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back are chalk and cheese, right? As far as the vibe of the movie, and that is why they work so well. I mean, we didn't want The Empire Strikes Back to be Star Wars 2.
No.
We got that with Force Awakens. That's all right. We had to wait 30 odd years for that. Sorry if I'm upsetting anybody out there, but anyway.
But see, this is where I think, for me, Irvin Kershner is my favorite director of all the films.
I agree with you.
Just because he was a very character-orientated director. We won't talk about the very last film he did in RoboCop 2, but but he was, when you're hearing, watching those interviews with Irvin Kershner talking about what he wanted in the film, he found, he was looking for a balance, he was saying, I wanted to have jokes, but I couldn't have gags, and, or wanted laughter, but I couldn't have gags, or whatever it was. But he found a middle ground, and I also think that was due to the clever writing of Lawrence Kasdan.
Sure.
You had Lee Brackett come in, and unfortunately Lee passed away. George had written the story already, he'd planned, once again, it was all in planning. But I think this was the film where George had to spend the least amount of time on. We know he was very heavily involved in Return of the Jedi, but this was the one where, he had one of his original film teachers directing it. Someone who was an established film director, very character-driven director. And George at the time, as he said, was always say, I'm setting up a business.
Exactly.
And I think that's where the pressure was off. And Kirsch got a little bit more involved in the characters. And I think that comes across in their performance in this film. Out of all three, I think their strongest performances are in Empire as far as how they're getting their message across in their performance. They are you've just got to look at Mark Hamill, half the film he spends with a puppet.
Oh, he's amazing in Empire.
It's so believable. Now, if that had been, Star Wars Goes to Muppet Island, you'd be like, oh, there's Kermit the Frog, and you'd be laughing and going, oh my God, they're going to break out into song, and those little rat ones would come out, and then you'd have the coming out, and you'd be like, oh my God. Yeah. But the Yoda puppet and Mark's performance, but I think that's also too from the direction that Kirsch was giving in regards to, even with Frank Oz, doing Yoda's performance, was just someone who was so clever with regards to getting that realism and that balance across. And what he wanted that tension, he wanted that emotion, he wanted everything going on, and he nailed it in every point in that film. And, I always say I don't like grading, but Empire just has that notch above for me for everything else, just purely based on, I think, the great direction, the solid script, and the performances from the actors.
Well, I agree with you there 100%. For me, look, A New Hope is my favorite Star Wars movie, right? Because it was the original one. It was the one that had such a big impact on me. But The Empire Strikes Back is a better film, right? For sure. And Kirsch's direction. And I mean, I loved it. What was it? One of the documentaries they were talking about when, Vader grabs Han's blaster across the table, right? They're trying to work out all this stuff about, how we're going to get it and get it on a string. And Kirsch is like, just chuck it across the table.
Yeah, that's right. He's throwing them.
And it was actually him who threw it.
Yeah, he was throwing them.
Just shut it, 3 takes. Well, chuck it across the table. Camera will pick it up, And so that's... just an example to me of just Empire was a lot more grounded, and we focused on the characters as we should have, and like any middle story of any book, any middle of any book, the middle of any movie is the most important part of it. It's where the meat is, right? And that's where the characters have to be driven. And he was just a genius at getting performances out of them. And look, I know Harrison Ford was just over the moon with Kirsch as a director because, George, the faster, more intense type sort of thing, which served the first movie well because it was that light, fantasy, save the princess movie, that Star Wars had to be, but The Empire Strikes Back had to be something different. And he was just picked the perfect director for the part, and he's just amazing. Now I know for a fact that when George finally saw what was happening with Empire with the edit and that, he wasn't happy at all, and George actually tried to cut it together himself, and he couldn't make the film any better. Thank God he didn't for that. But getting just on the Return of the Jedi, then, that is why George had so much control over Jedi. Was because he wanted to take that control back. Yeah. He picked the director. And I think a lot of Jedi was actually directed by George.
I think so
as well, because he had lost that sort of control with Empire and he wanted to bring it back a little bit. So
it's a shame though. Yeah. Like there was a part of me that felt sorry for Richard Marquand. He's always going to be on that poster and credited as being the director. But when you're reading, if you ever get a chance, get the Making of Return of the Jedi by J.W. Rinsler, which is a great book. And I remember one of the passages reading about how all the issues they were having with directors, and a lot of them were saying no. And of course, he wanted Steven Spielberg. He couldn't get Steven Spielberg because of the Directors Guild conflict that he was having, which I think if Steven had come on board, Steven would have taken a lot more control with regards to it. But that comes across too in the Empire of Dreams doco that Richard was a very inexperienced director. He'd done a film in the UK that was mildly successful. A lot of TV work, no special effects background. Kirsch was the same. He had no special effects background, but he was a film teacher, a very experienced film director. So, you had someone very inexperienced. And when you're watching the film, George is there once again going through, checking everything off. He's there at costume fittings. He's there on set. And even he says in the doco, I was on set a lot. And I was like, well, why? You shouldn't have been, because the directors should have been in control. And then you hear stories like from David Prowse, how Richard wouldn't even talk to him and all that sort of stuff. So, he'll always be credited. But yeah, I think you're 100% correct. I think the film should be read George Lucas directed. Exactly. I think he had a lot more control on this. And I think, as you would say, Empire was a shining example of that. And, that's why he did all three of the prequels. That's why I don't, there was rumors that he might split them, but he wanted complete control to be able to do it himself. And that shows in the prequels that he had, in Attack of the Clones, he brought on a co-writer, Jonathan Hale, who I'd never heard of before. And I thought, that's interesting. He's bringing in a co-writer. I wonder why. And I think that was to do with all the lovey-dovey stuff. And then, of course, he wrote the rest all by himself, sort of thing. So it was sad, I think, how it ended. I think if George had allowed a different director for 2 and 3, we would have got a different film, and I think it would have progressively, overall gotten better. As much as I do love the prequels, don't get me wrong, I like them for what they are, but I think that would have been even better if George had relinquished the grip a bit better, in that. But
yeah, I think it'd just be nice, like, people who don't know Star Wars, and you talk about it and that, so, where would I start? It would be nice to be able to say, start at episode 1 and watch it all the way through from 1 to 7 or 9 or whatever it's going to be, But you've always got to say start at episode 4, right?
You do.
Start the original trilogy, then go back and watch what happened beforehand. And that makes sense too, because there's so much revealed, the Vader being the father, all that sort of stuff in Empire, spoiler alert.
If you haven't seen it now,
you've seen the movie. Yeah, exactly. So, but I mean, if you watch the prequel start, all that gets lost later on. You don't have any impact.
No.
It's got none of it's got an impact if you watch it from episode 1, right?
No.
So you've got to watch it from 4, 5, and 6 because you're gonna know who Vader is. You're gonna know who Boba Fett is. You're gonna know, if you watch the prequels before episodes 4, there's no surprises there, anymore. So I'm always telling people, if you're showing the Star Wars to your kids for the first time, start at A New Hope, and then go back and watch the prequels.
Well, it's funny. Someone said to me once that you should watch them like 4, 5, 2, 3, and then 6.
Yeah.
A really weird way, because at the end of Empire he says, "I'm your father," and then you finish just like, "What? He's his dad." And then, here's the backstory. This is him as a teenager, and that's how I met your mother, and then it's all that sort of stuff. And then hi, I was a Jedi, and I was hanging out with my Jedi pals, and then she moved in. Her name was Padme. She lived across the hall.
Yeah, I think some people
the Senate hall, all that sort of stuff. So, but look, and then of course we're into a new era of Star Wars directors in JJ and Gareth Edwards, and I hate to say it, JJ, but Gareth outdid you in spades, mate. I think he did a stellar job at directing Rogue One, and that once again came across in his camera work, his camera style, and he took control of the camera himself on many occasions, and I think that's what Gareth likes to do. He likes to get down in the dirt, in the ground, and once again, I think he pushed his actors to their limits. I think JJ is a very creative mind and a very solid director. But yeah, look, I can say that I can see similarities from that to A New Hope. There are also a lot of differences. It's not a bad film, but it's not Empire level or A New Hope level.
No.
But I think Rogue One is, as a standalone film with characters that we did not know, bar a few of the background characters. I think Gareth really took the bull by the horns, and as much as they all carry on about the reshoots, it was the right thing to do, and Gareth took it on the chin, and he went out there and he did it again, and he knocked it out of the park. But that's what a good director can do. You can admit your faults and mistakes, or go, well, hang on, the film was going this way, and now it's going that way. And I can tell you now, as a director myself, on my second film with my documentary, that you can have multiple outlets for a story, and then you could spend a whole year on one and go, hang on, I've wasted my entire time. I need to go back to the drawing board and start again. And Gareth did that, and I commend him on what he did with Rogue One.
Yeah, well, I look, for much as, given Force Awakens a bit of a nudge there before, I enjoyed the movie. I do enjoy Force Awakens. I do watch it quite often. But JJ did the job that he had to do, and that was to reintroduce Star Wars again and remind people what was so great about it in the first place. And look, I'm not saying it's a carbon copy of A New Hope. There are a lot of very similar elements in there, but that's what makes Star Wars great. And Star Wars, as we know, is like a symphony of music. It does rhyme with each other, as it should. And I think JJ did a good job of The Force Awakens. It introduces new characters that we now care about, and I see Finn and Poe and Rey, up there. Kylo up there with Luke and Leia and Darth. That's just how they are in my mind now, and I can't wait to see what The Last Jedi brings us with a new thing. And so JJ, he did the job that he was hired to do, and I think he did it quite well. Now Gareth Edwards is a different director totally. He's, like you're saying, he's a lot more hands-on, a lot more in the middle of it all. And that's what I loved about Rogue One. To me, it was the first Star Wars movie where I actually felt like they actually went there and just shot it. They actually went to the universe and shot it. That's what it felt like to me when I watched Rogue One. Just the way it was put together. And you're right. He took it on the chin. He had to go back and reshoot a lot of things. The movie was all the better for it. It would have been interesting to see his original take on the film and what was going to happen, but in the movie. But he understood and he accepted that it was all for the better part of the film. The best movie they had to be made. They had to make it. Thank goodness Disney's got a world of money to throw at it to make that happen, because they know what's at stake.
That's it.
So like I said, I love Rogue One as well. I see it, the way it dovetails into Star Wars. A New Hope is beautiful. I've never actually watched them yet back to back, but
no, I've been meaning to, but I fell asleep when about 10 minutes into A New Hope because it was late at night, and I'm like, oh my god, I should have started this during the day. But that's the thing. That too is a clever director. Has made a seamless transition into a film that was done 40 years ago. And that's why I think Gareth has that nudge for me with regards to the director in this new era of Star Wars, is that someone who took an idea by John Knoll, who, once again, he worked in the special effects department at Lucasfilm, he was the computer, though, not the models, but still. And he took an idea from John Knoll and then ran with it. And like I say, to be able to watch a film, and I do remember, because I was still partially awake, when I put in A New Hope and the tentative force coming over the Star Destroyer, it felt like I was just like, hang on, hyperspace, what just happened? It just feels like I'm in the same movie. It was like watching a mini series, and straight away I was like, oh man, I'm just such on an emotional drain after that ending. And then, here we go. And there's Darth, what's going on? Oh, that's right. He had to he was benched for round 2. But that was the beauty of it, that Gareth and the way the story is put together. But that to me is a sign of a very clever director.
Yeah. And I think we're going to see in Rian Johnson, I just think we're going to see an amazing film coming up. And, I put Looper on again. I haven't watched Looper for about 2 or 3 years.
So
I think
good.
when I first got the Blu-ray, I watched it and it just went on the shelf. So I dusted that off, and I watched it the other night. And what an amazing movie that is! When you look at that, and it's just got me so excited and pumped to see what Ryan does now with The Last Jedi.
Well, he reminds me of Kirsch in the sense of very character-driven director and writer. He's very clever with his characters in the films and how he writes. And it's very sad for me to find out that he even though it was very early on that he was going to write the treatment for 9, he's come out and said he's not doing it. It's old information, which I got really sad about, because I thought, well, at least a part of you is going to carry on to the next film. But instead we've got the writers from Jurassic World and Safety Not Guaranteed doing the script. But I kept thinking it's going to follow that pattern, George Lucas, Kirshner, Richard Marquand. But you know what? Colin Trevorrow and his writing team could surprise us and blow us out of the water. But if it's anything to go by, this is going to wrap up the Skywalker story. From the way it's sort of sounding at the moment, that this could be the end. And, to me, though, Rian Johnson is going to be the Kirsch of this new saga, but I've just got this niggly feeling in the back that The Last Jedi could prove to be the Star Wars film, and I mean the Star Wars film. Once again, monster call, but and I know I've said it a few times, but I just think if the elements are tied together the way I think, because Ryan is a huge Star Wars fan and he loves the prequels, that he's going to tie everything together. Whether people are gonna cry and scream and it's like, no, you put Jar Jar back in the film. It could be anything. But I think he's gonna tie everything together. He's gonna once again add another layer to that mythology of the Force and the Jedi and all that sort of stuff. And I think he's gonna really do a fantastic job. But I'm trying not to get too excited about it. But I've got a funny feeling that at the moment Gareth is my number one boy in the new era, and I think Ryan might pip him at the post in this next film. But we'll have to wait and see. December's not far away. We've got 7 months until that film comes out. So it'll
fly by.
Well, it'll be June before we know it, and then we got D23 and who knows, and Han Solo 6 months after that. My God, my brain's going to explode with all the Star Wars going on. But but 40 years of Star Wars in 3 weeks, and Man, it's going to be emotional, I feel. I think I'm going to be a bit emotional, even though I wasn't born then. I'm going to be emotional. And, what a year, I guess, too, for us to start the podcast.
Yeah,
I feel
sure.
very special that I got to start it on the 40th anniversary of Star Wars and everything there. So, and it's going to be a big year for us, hopefully, with regards to things. But, I'm pumped. So many things going on. But, yeah, man.
Yeah,
so
that's awesome.
Wild ride for us. But before we wrap up the show, Blair, do you have anything Star Warsy that you want to chat about or anything, or drop any bombshells? Have you been talking to Mark Hamill or something? Or
no, not this week.
Not this week. Oh, dang it!
But just telling the listeners, we may have a rather major surprise guest soon in the next few weeks. So hold out for that one. We'll let you know when things happen. So can't say anything yet, but bear with us. It's going to get good. Okay. Right, now being the 40th anniversary of Star Wars, I was thinking the other day, what would be the best way to sort of honour the saga, honour our love of Star Wars and that. And I was thinking, 'cause I've told everybody's heard my story with Star Wars and how I grew up with it and that. I'm not going to go through all of that again, that's great. Then it hit me. I was going through a box the other day and I came across a book of poetry that I'd written.
Oh.
And about 1997, I started dabbling in a bit of poetry, and that just got interested in seeing what I could do on that. Anyway, it was around the time of the special editions, which was the 20th anniversary.
It was.
And I went through the box, and I came across this poem that I'd written, and about Star Wars and celebrating Star Wars for the 20th anniversary. Now, it's never seen the light of day.
Wow! What?
It's never seen the light of day, this poem. I've so a bit of a first for my saga and the listeners out there. I am actually going to recite my poem. So it's probably the best thing that I think that I could offer for Star Wars this year.
Dude. All right.
So it just this just comes from me, and rereading it again, I thought, it holds up. So on the 40th anniversary, you get to hear what I wrote for the 20th anniversary. So. Here we go. I'm going to open up now. My little poem it's called Ode to a Saga. Ode to a Saga. Here we go. Once there was a legend of a galaxy far away. As a child, I would escape there. For hours I would play. A world so full of wonder, of heroes brave and true. A Wookiee called Chewbacca. A droid we called R2. The sights beheld were wondrous, the action tightly paced, the thunderous sound of battle, a jump to hyperspace. But amongst all this excitement, what celebrates it from the rest is the story of a farm boy who was put right to the test. And through 3 great adventures, as Luke grew, we did too. We learned to look beyond ourselves, not just to try, but do. Star Wars is back. Let's celebrate. For I will not defile this child that lives inside the man inside the child. There you go.
Oh. Dude, that was awesome, man. That was awesome. I'm actually a bit teary. I'm wiping. You can't see me, but when we get a more powerful computer, you could have seen that. But I was getting a little teary, man.
I was happy to put it out there for the for the listeners, and it's probably what I could, the best thing that I could give.
Hey there, Rebels. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to show your support, please make sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter or subscribe to our YouTube channel. All links can be found on our website at mysaga.com.au. Thanks for joining us, take care, and may the Force be with you.